This is the Chris Stigall Show podcast.
Okay, guys, let's just rip. And Chris Stigall.
Chris Stigall. Chris, thanks for being with me tonight.
Chris Stigall.
I'm joined now by Chris Stigall.
Now, he puts the broad in broadband. It's Chris Stigall.
The Chris Stigall podcast is presented by usmedicalplan.com. Save big money monthly and get better health coverage at usmedicalplan.com.
Hey, great to have you here. Thank you so much for downloading the Chris Stigall Show podcast on this Monday, the 11th day of December. Still licking our wounds. If you're Chiefs fans, if you're Eagles fans, it was a rough one. But nevertheless, we soldier on. Those of you who aren't football fans, I know you don't care. But anyway, I got a great night at church last night. In fact, I walked away from both of those games. I went to bed at the half during the Dallas-Philadelphia game, and I went to church for a great Sunday concert of Christmas worship music on during the Chiefs-Bills game. So I decided I felt they were both going poorly in the first half. I wasn't going to let the second half ruin the rest of my evening. That turned out to be a good call. Coming up today, we're going to unpack the final undoing, the final nail in the coffin of one of these three Ivy League presidents, Liz McGill of Penn. She finally bit the proverbial dust. And yes, I know she still has her tenured professorship, but that's not really the point. The point is, I'll get into the point coming up. Also, adventures in log splitting. I'll share a little of that with you this weekend. Mitt Romney continues to remind us why the Republican Party is such a mess, while the Democrats continue to remind us that no matter how abhorrent they become, they always stick together. Always. Plus, lots of other headlines today, so don't go anywhere. First, let me tell you about John Ruhlman, the guy that sponsors this show and makes it possible each and every day. I know health insurance is expensive. I know monthly premiums are hugely expensive if you pay for them out of pocket. That's why I want you to call John today and just tell him what you spend. Tell him what kind of coverage you get. Whether you own a small business and you cover a handful of employees, you provide health insurance for just yourself or your family, you're a senior citizen maybe, retired on a fixed income, you got to buy a supplemental plan. Maybe you don't have any insurance at all because you think it's way too expensive. And I'm here to tell you, John can handle almost every one of those scenarios and surprise you with rates that are much more manageable and affordable. And you younger people that have no insurance, don't make the mistake of going without it. It's really nothing at all out of pocket. I mean, like it's a night out to eat for a month and, you're set up. So please call him. Please shop and compare. There are affordable options that don't mean you got to cut corners on your insurance coverage. 877-410-4321. It's a quick call, a couple of minutes. You could save hundreds, if not thousands of dollars on your health insurance premiums just by calling John Ruhlman's team at usmedicalplan.com. You can log on and get more information there too. usmedicalplan.com. Let me just start the show with a nice note I got from Shelley, who listens to the podcast and is a harumpher. This was the coolest note. She says, Chris, I want to tell you I was sitting in a bar on a cruise ship out of Tampa. Got to talking to the guy next to me, and he says he's on Substack. I said, I'm on Substack too. He said, do you subscribe to the Harumph Society? And she said, I do. She said, what are the odds of that? Harumph. Shelley, signed Shelley on a cruise ship somewhere in the Atlantic.
Harumph!
That's right.
Harumph! I didn't get a harumph out of that guy.
Give the governor harumph.
Harumph! You watch your ass.
Clearly you and the gentleman have great taste. How fantastic it is that you're about to set sail on the ocean and you'll have something, you'll have at least one friend to converse with. Harumph Society growing by leaps and bounds, so I thank all of you who have subscribed, and if you haven't yet, now would be the month to do it. We're entering, I don't have to tell you, one of the most tumultuous years in electoral politics. And we're going to want to hang tough together. This would also be a great gift. I will just tell you, it will be a great gift to somebody. If you have not subscribed or you'd like to see somebody in the Harumph Society that, in fact, a woman stopped me at church yesterday. She said, Stigall, I'm a harumpher. And I saw a guy make a comment. I want to talk to him. I want to get to know him better. I was explaining to her how she could connect with other harumphers because she wants to remain anonymous. A lot of people underground there at the Harumph Society. But she said, I saw a guy making some doctor referrals. I want to pick his brain on doctor referrals. I was like, well, apparently they're giving medical advice in the comments section now. Whatever. But that's the point. We're all friends in there, so I hope you'll check it out because Lord knows right now in this political climate, we need friends. So, having said all that, let's move to this. Liz McGill, bless her little heart. Did this surprise you that Liz McGill was the first to fold of the Hamas triune that testified on Capitol Hill last week? I'm a little surprised at this. I really was surprised. The Harvard president, gay, she's not left yet. Kornbluth, who, as I understand now, and I didn't know at the time, is Jewish. That's amazing. At MIT, she hasn't resigned, but McGill didn't make it. These are the three that went to Capitol Hill last week and, for whatever reason, just were not capable, twisted in knots, to denounce anti-Semitism and the extermination of Jews. Depends on the context, they kept saying over and over and over again. Then, as you know, they went back to their respective campuses and got earfuls from just about everybody. In Liz McGill's case, she got earfuls from Democrats. I suspect that's why. I actually believe that, in McGill's case, the board of the Wharton Business School called for her head. Now, when you start to call for insurrection inside your own ranks, that's hard to withstand. I don't know that the Harvard chick and the MIT chick have had to deal with that. McGill seemed uniquely positioned to fall because when Wharton piles on and the governor, who also happens to be Jewish of Pennsylvania, piles on, I think she had more pressure perhaps than the other two. That's your read?
I think so, Chris. And I think that you touched on something last week I think is very important. It's as if Josh Shapiro's PR team handled this whole thing.
Yeah.
To be perfectly honest. That's kind of my takeaway from it. It's like, okay, here's what we're going to do, you know?
The president of the University of Pennsylvania, chairman of its board of trustees, resigned Saturday, capping a tumultuous week of the Ivy League school stemming from statements the president made about anti-Semitism. Liz McGill, you know all that, blah, blah, blah. The resignation marked a stunning fall for college leaders, while raising questions about the power major donors have over the institutions, and just where schools should draw the line on protecting free speech, generally considered a bedrock of academia. Why does the Wall Street Journal sound like they're almost defending her? I'm reading the Wall Street Journal here. That sounds almost defensive, does it not to you?
It does, yeah.
Kind of sounds like Chiefs fans belly aching about Tony being lined up off sides. I mean, it happened. He did it. She did it. Like, you can bitch and moan about it if you want, but that's what happened. Free speech. Okay. And guess what? The free speech was met with our speech, which was, we don't like anti-Semitism. Free speech is fine. Nobody's debating free speech. But as we've all learned in this country, when somebody says something that other people don't like, it's always been the left that's played this game and won it so effectively. You know, you so much as tell an off-color joke these days or say something, you know, somewhat snide or you know, what's considered mildly or even accidentally racist, for instance, you'll lose your job. How many of us on the right have been dealing with this jihad on words for the better part of a decade or more? So now the left is upset because it's been turned on them. Is that it? Nobody's questioning whether she's free to say, I don't know about the context of calling for the genocide of Jews. I need context. She's free to say that. But apparently lots of billionaire donors and the Wharton Business School Board and the Jewish governor of Pennsylvania all say, yeah, you're free to say it, but that's pretty anti-Semitic, so you probably should go. So that's their freedom of speech being enacted too. I love this. Well, boy, really a question about free speech here. Presidents of Harvard and MIT have also faced calls to resign. Leaders at other schools under intense scrutiny regarding how they balance the rights of pro-Palestinian protesters with the safety of students on campus. Rights of student speech versus safety of students on campus. I ask you again, and I hate to do this because it's so ugly, but I just ask it. Well, you know what? I don't need to. I was about to give you a hypothetical, but I don't need to give you a hypothetical because, interestingly, on the same day that Liz McGill resigns, I'm sorry, it was the day before. It was a day before. This story crossed my news feed, and I kind of laughed out loud. Now, remember, The Wall Street Journal, and it won't surprise you that in Philadelphia, Patty's in a bunch over the Inquirer is also very, very upset about free speech. I mean, it's really come to a crazy time in this country when leftists can't call for the eradication of a people. Damn it. I mean, what of free speech in this country? If you can't call for the genocide of Jews, then what kind of constitution have we? Shouts the left. So before Liz McGill resigned on Friday, I see this. New Jersey man formally sentenced to 8 years in prison after racist rant went viral. 8 years in prison for a racist rant. A New Jersey man caught on video using racist slurs against his black neighbors, formally sentenced to 8 years in prison Friday. The sentencing was part of the plea deal announced back in October when a guy called Edward Matthews pled guilty to 4 counts of bias, intimidation, Sastetti. Bias intimidation. Matthews, age 47, sparked outrage in his Mount Laurel, New Jersey community more than 2 years ago. When video of his racist rant went viral, the mayor of Mount Laurel is calling for a federal hate crime investigation following the man's viral racist rant. July 2nd, 2021, resident came to Mount Laurel Police Department to file a harassment complaint against Matthews. A short time later, Mount Laurel Police went to the home of this guy for a report of a man needing to be removed from the area. Authorities say the officer found Matthews using racial slurs against several other residents. Prosecutors say the investigation revealed a pattern of abuse from Matthews against his neighbors that included leaving a threatening note on one of their vehicles. Matthews was taken into custody July 5th. Dozens of protesters surrounded his home. A Mount Laurel man taken into custody as protesters gathered outside his home, now viral, that shows him nonchalantly hurling the N-word at his neighbors. Matthews said he was drunk at the time. Along with bias intimidation, prosecutors said Matthews also pled guilty to a drug offense. Prosecutors say the drug offense filed after hallucinogenic mushrooms were found after a search of his home. Okay, we know people don't go to prison for hallucinogenic mushrooms anymore. That doesn't happen. You don't sentence a guy to 8 years in prison for hallucinogenic mushrooms, do you? Okay, so let's talk about this. I'm serious. I was about to make a made-up scenario, but there's no need. This is a perfect scenario. Sincere question. You have a mob of people on your campus. You're the Penn, Harvard, or MIT president. You have a mob of people on your campus calling for the eradication of the Jewish people. And the Wall Street Journal, as well as the Philadelphia Inquirer today, are wondering aloud, what of the state of free speech in this country now? Now that Liz McGill has been removed or resigned from her post as president of Penn, what of free speech? Oh, they clutch their pearls and they say, oh, the First Amendment is in peril now. Oh, academia. Oh, the importance of free speech on college campuses is under assault. Oh, they lament. Now, let me ask you something. Sincere question, and I know how provocative it sounds, but I'm serious. What about the free speech of Mr. Matthews? Edward Matthews, who was just sentenced to 8 years in prison for hurling the N-bomb over and over and over again. Bias, what did they call it again, the charges against him? Bias intimidation? Prosecutor Matthews taken. I'm trying to remember what I just said. Yes. Anyway, 8 years in prison. Pled guilty to 4 counts of bias intimidation. Wasn't Mr. Matthews just exhibiting free speech? Seriously, Fast Eddie, why can't you run around your neighborhood and just scream the N-word at black people as they pass by? Why not? Of course you shouldn't. Of course you can't. Of course you wouldn't be allowed. Of course there would be outrage, appropriately so, and all of those things. But why is it that for some reason, when you call for the eradication of Jews, we have to sit around and stroke our chins and consider the meaning of free speech? I don't understand. I'm serious now. Somebody's going to have to help me speak leftist. Is there something about black people that makes them more protected than Jews? Can somebody help me? Because when the guys were in Charlottesville with the torches and the khakis, that whole made-up scene, very fine people on both sides, that was a national issue for years, still is. Why is the mistreatment of blacks, why is the calling of a black person the N-word, why is it, serious question now, because here I am as just a middle-aged white guy. I know I don't have a right to an opinion in this scenario, so I'll just ask from the sidelines. Let's have a serious adult conversation. Why is one man sentenced to 8 years in prison for hurling the N-word over and over and over again? He didn't hurt anybody, did he? Anything I read in the details of that story say he physically touched a single person or hurt anyone in any way? No, he didn't. Bias intimidation was the charge. Bias intimidation. He pled guilty to 4 counts, sentenced to 8 years in prison. What the hell is a mob of people on your college campus, Miss McGill, Miss Gay, Miss Kornbluth? What is a mob of people calling for the genocide of Jews? What is that, if not bias intimidation? Why aren't all those people rounded up and sentenced to 8 years in prison? Free speech! What a free speech! I mean, listen to this clown. Panties in a bunch over at the Inquirer. 1 down, 2 to go. A clearly ebullient Elise Stefanik posted on X, urging on her dream of an academic Saturday night massacre that would also take down the 2 college leaders who testified last week along with McGill. But what Stefanik promised on Saturday night and what her allies are cheering on goes well beyond a few high-profile resignations. She promised the current crisis over what constitutes anti-Semitism on college campus and how administrators like McGill have been handling it will lead to more congressional hearings on all facets of their institution's negligent perpetration of anti-Semitism, including administrative, faculty, and overall leadership and governance. This weekend, McGill's resignation, urged by some Penn billionaires, because it's always the billionaires. They're all, the billionaires. Rich guys demanding a resignation. Now, you see, there's the real power. The billionaires. Probably Jewish, too. Why don't you say it, Will Bunch? Go ahead, you want to. Why don't you? Penn's billionaires, withholding massive donations amid intense criticism from both political parties, including Biden's White House, have led the national story everywhere. It's bumped back coverage of Israel's intensifying strikes on Gaza that have killed hundreds every day. See, there's Bunch again. Wants to let you know editorially that Israel is victimizing the poor Gazans. Snuck that in there. You see what he does? And it's drowned out the Biden administration's international pariah move of vetoing a UN ceasefire resolution. McGill's legalistic, bloodless deer-in-the-headlights response to incessant probing by Stefanik and other lawmakers was not good. Oh, thanks, Will. But not just because she blew a chance to condemn the horror of anti-Semitism, but it was also a weak defense of free speech. I'm not writing to express any regret over her departure. No, sure you're not. It seemed to me she governed Penn like a candle in the wind, wanting to defend academic freedom, but then betraying those values. By ceding the high ground to demagogues like Stefanik, the fallout from this affair is more likely in the long run to hamper the fight against anti-Semitism rather than to bolster it, which is beyond unfortunate, because no one can deny the scourge of anti-Semitism. Then he goes on to bring up the Pittsburgh synagogue shooting and was happy to report that that was a right-wing fanatic who did that back in 2021. There's no doubt anti-Semitic incidents are on the rise, he writes. Stefanik's relentless questioning didn't focus on actions at Penn, like October's anti-Semitic graffiti on campus, but on words, especially on protesters' use of the term intifada. How much of this is about anti-Semitism, he concludes, and how much of this is about something else, such as the fact that the college presidents who testified on Capitol Hill don't look like the 300 years of school leaders who came before them. And so here we get to the nut of it. Had to skip ahead through all the gobbledygook. You see, these women are under attack because they're women. If these were white guys, it would be fine. They'd be left alone. Bill Ackman, billionaire hedge fund manager, deeply disgruntled Harvard alum and donor, said the quiet part out loud last week when he made his repulsive allegation in a tweet that his alma mater's first black president, a child of Haitian immigrants, an award-winning scholar, was hired to satisfy diversity goals. Oh, disgusting. Well, it's true. Fareed Zakaria, over at CNN this weekend. Do you remember Dr. Tabia Lee? Remember her? We had her on the show back when she wrote this unbelievable op-ed in the New York Post back in October. She said, I'm a DEI director. I've literally been hired, I've studied diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm a black woman. I've studied DEI. I was hired to run DEI on the campus of, I forget the name of the college in California. And when I got there, I couldn't believe that DEI was being used as a shield against anti-Semitism. And I was fired for speaking out against anti-Semitism as a black woman. Fareed Zakaria, also not a white man, on CNN, not a conservative network. Fareed Zakaria, CNN, this weekend about diversity, equity, and inclusion. Listen.
Many of them clustered around diversity and inclusion. It started with the best of intentions. Colleges wanted to make sure young people of all backgrounds had access to higher education and felt comfortable on campus. But those good intentions have morphed into a dogmatic ideology and turned these universities into places where the pervasive goals are political and social engineering, not academic merit.
Oh my! Now that's not a billionaire white guy, is it? Who was that? He said kind of a funny accent for a billionaire white guy on TV. Oh no, that was Fareed Zakaria, a brown guy. Out of curiosity, if I asked Panties in a Bunch this morning, would he be happy about Elon Musk preserving free speech on X? Just out of curiosity. I don't know, it just dawned on me. I bet if I went through the archives of Panties in a Bunch there at the Inquirer, I bet he's written glowing things about Elon Musk, hasn't he? And the work he's done at X. Yeah, but I digress. Anyway, this is a, good Lord, it's just blithering pages of blithering. He's written a novel on this. While with McGill's departure, those who want to fight back for free speech face an increasingly uphill battle. It's easy for folks like the Biden White House to follow the path of least resistance and pretend that by slam-dunking Penn's ex-president, they're claiming the moral high ground, even as they sell Israel more tanks and shells like the one that was just used to deliberately target a Reuters journalist. Wow, that's quite a statement. He's suggesting that Israel deliberately targeted and killed a Reuters journalist? Boy, if I didn't know any better, this sounds kind of anti-Jew. Oh, well, careful there, Panties in a Bunch. You're sounding a little anti-Semitic in there at your keyboard. It's a lot harder to defend free expression knowing that the worst people will even try to brand you as an anti-Semite, just as those who once called out McCarthyism were stigmatized as fellow travelers. Instead of jumping on the McGill scrum, let's praise the courage of those defending the First Amendment. In a saga packed with irony, nothing would be more ironic than allowing a manipulated definition of anti-Semitism to shut down learning and inquiry, which are so central to the great Jewish traditions. I see. So Panties in a Bunch now wants to caution all of us not to overuse the word anti-Semitism because it might stymie free speech. Gosh. There's a white guy in New Jersey who's being sentenced to 8 years in prison for using the N-word a lot. Has the charge of racism been used to stymie and stifle people's speech in this country for a long time, do you suppose? I mean, if that's Will Bunch's argument, then could we have a conversation about if he doesn't like the overuse of the term anti-Semitism, could we also extend that to the overuse of the term racism? Because I don't ever hear anybody talk about the overuse of the term racism. Everything is racist. People are literally going to prison for saying racist words against blacks. But Will Bunch says we really need to parse this and get smart about calling for the eradication of Jews. That can't always be a reason to silence people's speech. I see. You people on the left are going to have to get your story straight. You can't quite figure it out. You're willing to jail a white guy for using the N-word, but you really want to be cautious and pump the brakes on calling for the extermination of Jews. Once again, the left-wing handbook is contradicting itself. The religion of the left is collapsing on itself. So Liz McGill is the first to go. We'll see. Now, of course, as is pointed out, because what's her name is a black woman, gay, there at Harvard, and because Kornbluth is Jewish herself, I suspect they're a protected class, the both of them. Even though I don't think a black woman or a Jewish woman should be allowed to be anti-Semitic or flirt with anti-Semitism, certainly when running the leading Ivy League institutions. You know, I mean, my Baptist preacher preached about this weekend. So offensive to him was it that he led his sermon with these three women's testimony this weekend. It's been my pleasure and honor to talk about Bob Spinato at Williamsburg Dental in Broomall, just off the Blue Route, as my dentist and friend of over 12 years now. But now he has two brand new associates, his daughter Alexa and Dr. Geddes. Tell him about them, Bob.
Yeah, it's really a thrill for me to have both the dentists, my daughter and Dr. Jared Geddes. One of the things that I love about them both is when they don't have a patient in their chair, they're in my room watching what I do and trying to learn from me. And we hear enough about the new generation, and they think they know everything and they don't want to work. And I've got two dentists who are really, really want to learn and really, really willing to work hard. And I enjoy learning from them. They brought some new skills and some new technologies to our office that will be great benefits to our patients. And so, if anything, I think that having them both there is going to expand and lengthen my career as opposed to shorten my career.
Pick up the phone or go online, make that appointment, 610-353-2700 or williamsburg-dental.com.
Now, I'm a free speech person like you are.
Yeah.
I'm also Team Israel.
Yeah.
So let's just get real about this.
Sure.
Calling for the genocide of Jews. One of them, I think it was the Penn person, said, I've not heard that. Mm-hmm. In other words, how explicit is it? Because when I break down the phrases that I hear, first there's the intifada. There are a lot of people who say you shouldn't say that. I disagree. Yeah. Free speech. Yeah. Intifada. That's one of those vague terms like jihad. It probably means violence, but you know what? It's just uprising, whatever. Give you the better. Okay. Then there's from the river to the sea.
Yep.
Okay, that's a little more genocide-y, but you know, let's give the benefit of the doubt. Could be, well, we just want the Jews to move, not die. Where they're going to move to, I'm going to address that next week. Our season finale is next week, by the way. It's true. As you can see, the excitement is building. Yeah. And then there's a phrase, by any means necessary. Yeah. Okay, now I'm kind of peeing my pants.
Yeah.
Right? And I'm not even Jewish, but come on. By any means necessary? So where do you draw the line here, and what do you say is free speech and what should not be allowed?
Well, the First Amendment actually gives a lot of guidance on this. And one thing that's been horrifying over the past month is seeing a lot of unprotected speech on campus. We're seeing things that cross the line into true threats, discriminatory harassment. We're seeing things that actually aren't protected. But merely offensive expression, like saying intifada, that is absolutely protected. But can saying things like that be part of a pattern of threats or harassment? Of course it can be. And it was kind of embarrassing to watch these university presidents of the top institutions in the country not being able to answer that clearly.
Right. See, what irks me is that, look, I'm always going to be on the side of as far as you can push free speech. Yep. And of course, as you say, there's already limits to some speech, violence and so forth. You can fire in a crowded theater. Okay, so it's not absolute. What bothers me is the double standard.
Oh, my God, yeah.
That, can you imagine? I mean, okay, say they don't want to say kill the Jews, but I certainly have heard chanted, F the Jews. The Jews. Can you imagine saying F the and any other? I'm not going to say any other group because they'll clip the tape and I'll live with that forever.
Right.
But I, I cannot think of any other group that you could say F the Jews.
Oh,
Right. And I'm not even Jewish, but come on. By any means necessary. That, so where do you draw the line here, and what do you say is free speech and what should not be allowed?
yeah.
I cannot think of any other group that you could say F the blank and have it be acceptable.
The double standards on campus, we talk about this in canceling, we talk about this at FIRE all the time. The double standards are astounding, but you have to have them when you have policies like this, because if they actually enforce them against everybody, they wouldn't last a second.
Yeah, I honestly think the kids, I think they're, that phrase, useful idiots?
Yeah.
The bigger scandal here is that these are the biggest, most esteemed colleges in the country, and they've raised a bunch of idiots.
Which is another subject altogether. But it's interesting. Bill kind of has a tiered level of speech that doesn't bother him. Intifada, oh, it's okay. River to the sea, a little more problematic. By any means necessary, that's his threshold. Bill's kind of tying himself in knots here. Folks, look, speech is one thing. Does the marketplace tolerate it is another. I don't want anybody to misunderstand me here. I am as pro-free speech as they come. I've literally made my career and living on speaking freely. Nobody is more sensitive to being able to speak freely than me. And I can say a lot here. There are things that I will not be permitted to say on this air. I may say them, and the FCC may legally permit them, but my company won't. And my company would fire me if they ultimately concluded I crossed a line for them. All of us have to answer to someone. Free speech when you're working for other people is not absolute. That's the difference here. If we're having a discussion about free speech just out on the street, different story. I mean, Westboro Baptist Church, I bring them up again. God hates the F word for gays. They hold that sign up at every concert, at every military funeral. God hates the gays, only they say the F word for gays on signs, sandwich board signs. They harass families at military funerals. They're the worst people in the world. Horrible, hateful people. And they've won court cases. Chanting Antifada, river to the sea, by any means necessary. Folks, I hate to say it, but that's technically protected speech. My point is not parsing what is free speech and what's not, and tiers of speech, and when does it cross the line, and fire in a crowded theater. No. My question is, Bills. This guy in New Jersey got 8 years in prison for using the N-word a lot. On the street, in his neighborhood. Not in his job. Liz McGill and these other Ivy League pinheads were sitting in congressional testimony trying to parse whether anti-Semitic rhetoric was in fact anti-Semitic and threatening. Oh, I don't know. Kind of depends on what the meaning of the word, context. And guess what? The boards at these universities and the donors to these universities and people who support or live in a community with these universities said, you're a bigot. You're entertaining bigotry. No one's debating. You understand there's a difference? No one's debating free speech here. We're debating intent. We're debating ideology. We're debating, will we tolerate people thinking, believing in their hearts, saying and thinking and believing that genocide of Jews is something we can flirt with on our campus? We have a collective decision to make, particularly people that give to that school. Do I want to endorse that? She's free to say it. She's not going to prison like Mr. Matthews in New Jersey is, who, by the way, shouldn't be in prison for saying the N-word. I'll just say. Should he be drummed out of his neighborhood? Should he probably have some sleepless nights in his neighborhood? Probably, because that's what people do when they're abhorrent. When someone's abhorrent in your community or at your workplace or whatever, people deal with them. Doesn't mean the law has to get involved. I'm not suggesting Liz McGill should go to prison. This is not a matter of free speech. This is a matter of ideology. And will it be tolerated amongst decent people? This is not a First Amendment debate, folks. It's not a First Amendment debate. That's the point. Okay, fellow harumphers and podcast listeners, my friends at gulagamerica.com want to invite you in to celebrate Christmas and Happy New Year with a big discount on all their stuff. Great stuff. Have you been to gulagamerica.com yet? They're our newest sponsors. A woman wrote me on Facebook the other day. She said, how do you spell that? Okay, I didn't consider some people might need to look it up. Gulag, gulagamerica.com, to help you celebrate the holidays in this period of inflation and even into the new year. Gulagamerica.com is giving you a big discount if you use my promo code when you shop. You'll take 20% off all apparel orders at their online store if you use the promo code CHRIS20. That's CHRIS20 when you check out. All right, and they're keeping this sale extended through January 6th. All right, so again, it's promo code CHRIS20. The sale extends till January 6th at gulagamerica.com. Really funny graphic tees and hoodies. There's a newer one that says, I went to re-education camp and all I got was this totally awesome T-shirt. I love that. My particular favorite, and it's one that I had a friend actually ask, hey, can I get my hands on some of those? I'm going to have to buy a couple for my buddy. The GFY, the vintage-looking, it's a parody logo. You'll have to see it online at gulagamerica.com. The GFY with STFU treatment. It's escaping me, the name brand that it's parodying. It's like a motor oil, I think. GFY. That's an homage to Elon Musk's big speech at that symposium where he told Bob Iger of Disney to go F himself. Anyway, they made that into a shirt, like they do so many great things at gulagamerica.com. You got to see some of these stuff. I love them. Or if you need a great last-minute gift, gulagamerica.com gift cards are also an option. If you'd like, somebody would really like these. That's what I might do. I might just give my buddy a gift card from gulagamerica.com so he can order the size that he wants. You can also print on demand. So there's no discount on the purchase of a gift card, but I do want you to know, otherwise, Chris20 is your discount for the apparel you shop online, okay? 20% off straight through the 6th of January. And we thank our friends at gulagamerica.com for being great sponsors and friends and founding harumphers. And as they always say at Gulag America, it's not their wish, it's their warning. First of all, I had a couple of big trees downed in the yard, and I told the guy, I said, I don't know, cut the trunks up into like 18-inch sections and I'll take it from there. Man, was that stupid. I was trying to do it on the cheap. I said, no, you know what I think? I think if you drop those trees and then hack them up into 18-inch sections, I'll take it from there. That was so boneheaded, Fast Eddie. If I had it to do all over again, I would have paid any amount of money to have the guy drop the tree, saw them into 18-inch halves, then cut them up from there, at least into manageable pieces. Instead, what I have are huge, and I'm not exaggerating when I tell you, I don't know, probably 2-foot wide chunks of trunk laying in the yard. 2 feet around, like if you took a ruler to it, about, couple of rulers wide.
Yeah.
And I bring one of those log splitters in. I rent one because I don't want to buy one. I say to myself, should I buy one or not? I say, I'm not going to use this all the time. What am I doing? Like a business? No. I'll rent it and I'll bring it in. Most amazing piece of equipment. I've never used it. I've seen it, but I've never used them. A lifesaver for sure. But the thing is, you've got to get those big chunks of stump to the splitter. You got to roll them there and get them there. And that was the hardest part of the whole day, was trying to get them underneath the splitter. Once you get that thing cranked, 30 tons comes down on that log or that piece of stump, splits the thing like crazy. It's amazing. Very mind clearing, just totally mindless exercise. But man, the body's feeling it today.
No, Chris, it's awesome. But now I think you fully understand that when you get trees removed, it is very important to pay attention what the options are after they're removed.
I have such respect. I've always had respect for people that take. I mean, tragic story, actually. The last time we hired a guy to remove some trees, the week before he was to come to our house to remove trees, a tree fell, bounced the wrong way, and killed the guy. I mean, it's just deadly serious work to drop a tree and then to cut it all up and remove it. That's got to be some of the most physically taxing work there is. And there are people that's their living. My hat's off to you if that's what you do for a living. I know some guys was talking to a guy last year. He said, yeah, I like to get out there in the back with an axe and just swing away. I'm going to work out and get some fresh. Shut up. Quit your bragging. I don't want to hear anything about that. No, I'm teasing. Look, I know that would be a great workout, but whoo. Yeah, that is some intense upper body stuff, man.
There's science, there's mechanics to all that. No, tree removal is an art. I don't think people realize until they actually have to have it done. Tree removal is an absolute art. I love those guys.
I do too. I would never try to drop a tree on my own, but I got uppity and said, well, once you get it down, just cut it up into manageable chunks and I'll handle it from there like some idiot. I mean, 2 days out in the yard, I got maybe halfway through all these stumps laying in my yard. So I'm going to have to spend another weekend or two at least probably getting this cut up. And then once you've split all the wood, of course, now you've got a big pile of split wood. That means you've got to transport it yet again someplace to store it.
Yeah, and keep it dry if you're using it.
That's right.
Man.
And I know you're saying, Stigall, don't you have kids? Well, I do, but they're teenagers, and you understand teenagers. Not that they wouldn't help, and a couple of them did for a little bit, but they've got their own jobs, and I don't know. I started to imagine for the first time being an empty nester and trying to do this stuff by myself, and I thought, no, this is why people, now I get it. I mean, it took me till age almost 47, but now I understand why people downsize and move into like condos that are maintenance provided. I was out there in the yard splitting these trunks going, this is why. This, I don't know, 10 years ago I may not have thought it, but now I think, okay, now I get it. I'd rather have a grounds crew so I can go play around a golf. Duly noted.
Here, I'm going to watch. Here, go ahead, Sonny. Have fun with the shovel.
Oh, man. I think ibuprofen's going to be in the offing for a while. Anyway, what else today? The story out of Politico about this Dubai meeting, the COP28, COP28, or whatever they call it, many nations gathered for the big climate summit. I heard the senator from Massachusetts, Markey, was there, telling the global community that we really are going to have to cut all our consumption of oil and gas in half by 2030 if we're going to get to meaningful goals. Can you imagine? I don't even think China's here, but if they were, can you imagine India and China and these guys sitting there listening to some bloviating moron from Massachusetts tell them to cut their consumption of coal and gas in half by 2030? I mean, they must just laugh in their faces, these fools. They should. I would. And now this from Politico. Building wind power, canceling coal, it's drowning under borrowing costs. Shazam, ladies and gentlemen. It costs a bunch of money to build these solar panel farms and these wind farms, and when you go to the bank and ask for dough to do it, as it turns out, it's really, really expensive right now because inflation is sky high and it's costing more in building materials and labor and on and on and on. Essentially, persistent rate spikes have scrambled economic fundamentals for large, capital-intensive projects with long repayment periods, the exact type of projects needed if the world wants to hit its goals of massively slashing carbon emissions by mid-century. So yet another reason this is as stupid. It's not only not scientific, it's not even practical. We already knew they were expensive. We already knew most of the materials aren't even domestically made. You have all these existing coal-fired power plants that are being taken offline, and now in record high inflation, you're asking people to invest money or give out loans at huge interest rates for years and years and years to build these farms, these wind farms and these solar farms that aren't sustainable, really. They aren't sustainable for our energy needs long term. And you're asking people to take out high interest loans for a long period of time to construct them. All the while, this perfectly built, scientifically operable, plentiful, readily available, easy to power coal-fired power plant just sits idle. The energy companies built this thing. It works like a champ. It powers all our energy needs, and they're taking more of them offline under the auspices of not warming the planet. It's amazing. Building wind power, canceling coal, drowning under borrowing costs.
Chris, I think I have audio from Jamie Dimon from last year with Pramila Jayapal when they wanted him to stop and JP Morgan to stop investing in fossil fuels. I think I have that.
Okay, yeah, that's a great reminder. That's right. Said that they told him, when are you going to stop over there at JP Morgan putting your money into fossil fuels? Knock it off.
It's a hurricane. Right now it's kind of sunny. Things are doing fine. Everyone thinks the Fed can handle this. That hurricane is right out there down the road coming our way. We just don't know if it's a minor one or Superstorm Sandy or Sandy or Andrew or something like that. And it's you better brace yourself.
That's Jamie Dimon saying that. I'm not sure the context of that. Was that what we were looking for or no? I don't think that was it. I felt like he was more specifically asked about.
Yeah, sorry, I have a 2.5 minute cut of the whole thing with him. Yeah, sorry,
right.
that's
that's all right. Long. Never mind. Your memory's good on that. That is what it was, but that's not the clip. But he does, when he was pressed to not invest in this stuff anymore, he said, no, that's foolish. Of course we're going to need fossil fuels for a long period of time. And no, I have no intention of stopping investing in it, was essentially what he said to this Democrat loon. High mortgage rates stalling the housing market. This from Axios. The lock-in effect is real. As one real estate agent put it, 2023 was the year your first home accidentally became your forever home. Many people are interested in moving, but not to swap their 3% interest rate for 7 to 8%, says one Minnesota-based realtor telling Axios. I'll tell you what, that's exactly my story. We bought a house 2 years ago at 3% interest rate. If we wanted to today, turn around and sell. I mean, not that we do, but if we did, we couldn't. We could not. I've told you this before. We could not buy the house we're in right now. At least we couldn't make manageable mortgage payments on the house we're in now if we bought it now versus the 2 years ago we bought it. That's how dramatic the interest rates are. If everything was even and you kept it just the same. If there's nothing out there for me to buy, why would I sell? We're all kind of stuck in that paradigm right now, says an economist at Windmere Real Estate. Meanwhile, it got even harder for first-timers to make the leap to home ownership this year. You now have to earn $115,000 a year to afford a typical house. Mortgage rates would need to slide significantly to loosen homeowners' golden handcuffs and boost listing activity, real estate experts say. Some shoppers are starting to accept that rates probably won't fall back to pandemic levels. Others have found deals on new construction, townhomes, and condos. This is what I was talking about last week, and I've been kind of wondering to myself out loud, if this does not correct itself, the Fed's supposed to release their plan for interest rates, and they're supposed to hold them again. They predict they'll hold here again in this last meeting before the end of the year. If this dynamic doesn't change, people my age don't sell their homes because they can't. And younger people, whole swaths, a whole generation or two of younger people have to make six figures to buy a house. And most young people do not make six figures to buy a house. I mean, for instance, while I'm on it, the golden age of restaurant worker wage growth is over. This also from Axios. Restaurant workers' wage growth has slipped considerably since the end of the COVID-19 pandemic, falling below even pre-pandemic rates. It's a sign that restaurants are no longer quite as desperate for workers as they were during the late pandemic era when many struggled to replace employees who left for other industries. It's also a reflection of inflation's impact on restaurants and consumers alike. Restaurant workers' wages grew at almost 5% a year over year in October 2023. That is slowed from peak growth of 10.5% in December of 2021. When the average wage base was $12.60 and average hourly earnings totaled $15.85. Restaurants' costs are up, due in part to inflation, while consumers are often loath to pay high prices because they're also getting hit with higher costs on basically everything in life. Discretionary spending on dining out is the first thing to go when times get tougher. Tips may be shrinking amid a growing sense of tipping fatigue. So, one sector where younger people could make a great living is being hammered. People aren't tipping. That's in serving at restaurants. This is a recipe, it seems to me, down the road if interest rates don't come down and inflation doesn't ease. I can imagine a lot of people, again, my age and older, that are in homes right now, locked in them forever. Because who's going to buy them? This is what I don't understand. And I suppose the marketplace, God willing, we're going to have a course correction in administrations and policies change. But if this stays at this current trajectory and you own a home right now, the odds of you being able to turn around and sell it at the market value you were thinking of just a couple of years ago is probably slim to none. Who's going to buy it? So if all young people can do is afford rent, and more people are building townhomes and condos and mixed-use properties and things like that because that's where the builders are making the money, the inventory will only grow as we get older and want to try to sell our houses. That would just naturally mean our existing homes would decrease in value, it seems to me, which may ultimately be good for young people trying to buy a home, but very bad for you and me of a certain age and older who are hoping to cash out on our home someday. That's how I read it. I mean, I'm not an economist, and we'll certainly talk with Steve and others this week and maybe get a clearer sense of it. But that's what I see coming if we don't course correct. I mentioned earlier that while Penn's Liz McGill was removed as president, Harvard's board is weighing whether or not to remove Claudine Gay because, and here's how media writes it, they're not so sure they want Elise Stefanik to win. Isn't that amazing? Elise Stefanik, Republican who was asking the line of questions that got these women in trouble in the first place, they see this as Elise Stefanik's fault. Harvard and some members of the board are thinking, well, yeah, you sounded a little anti-Semitic there, Claudine, but gosh, we hate to let a Republican win. How sick. The Harvard Corporation, one of the two boards governing the Ivy League school, will meet today to discuss the future of President Claudine Gay. The other governing body, Harvard's Board of Overseers, met yesterday. Tensions reportedly high at both boards over whether taking action would be worth it, appearing that Elise Stefanik, the Republican from New York, was able to force an ouster. The prospect of allowing the impression that Stefanik was able to successfully pressure for Gay's removal has caused some to balk. So you see, progressives are committed to anti-Semitism, so much so they think if it means submitting, or letting a Republican get the best of them, they'll just ride with the anti-Semitism. They will ride with talk of slaughtering Jews and genocide sooner than they will allow a Republican line of questioning to embarrass their president out of a job. That's how committed leftists are to defeating Republicans. Mitt Romney, on the other hand, may I give you a dose of what Republicans are like? Not that it'll come as much as a surprise to you. Mitt Romney on Meet the Press this weekend for some reason. I don't know why in the world you'd have Mitt Romney on the show. Mitt Romney says he's not running again. Mitt Romney's irrelevant. He's a loser. He's leaving the Senate, so why not make him a featured spokesperson of the Republican Party? Here's Mitt Romney being asked on whether or not Biden should be impeached.
As you know, House Republicans have signaled that they may vote as early as this week on an impeachment inquiry into President Biden, despite the fact that they haven't shown yet a direct link between Hunter Biden's business dealings and President Biden. Have you seen any evidence that President Biden has committed high crimes and misdemeanors?
No, I don't see any evidence of that at all. I think before you begin an impeachment inquiry, you ought to have some evidence, some inclination that there's been wrongdoing. And so far, there's nothing of that nature that's been provided.
So are you opposed to the impeachment inquiry?
Well, if I were in the House, I'd vote against it unless they were able to bring forward evidence that suggests that there were a high crime or misdemeanor that had been committed. But so far, that hasn't been the case. Look. Fortunately, for most people, we're not responsible for the misdeeds of our kids and grandkids and great-grandkids. Nothing in my family I'm embarrassed about. But President Biden's son, Hunter, is obviously been a very unsavory person and has had some extremely damaging personal foibles, including a drug habit and so forth. That's not President Biden, and we're not going to impeach someone because of the sins of their kids.
I wish I could tell you this was exclusive to Mitt Romney. As you know, it's not. So you see, Joe Biden is clean and pure as the wind-driven snow, and there's no justification to impeach Joe Biden whatsoever. It's just that Hunter's a bad guy and a troubled kid, but that doesn't reflect on Joe Biden. Not at all. He's done nothing worthy of being impeached. To hold that position as a Republican at this hour is the reason Mitt Romney is not running in Utah again, the reason he lost the presidential election. He's weak. He's spineless, and he's not even, he's a swamp dweller. He's not even being truthful. Remember, didn't he just say something last week about how wonderful and kind and articulate and great Joe Biden was? I can't remember what the clip was about exactly, but I remember him talking about how great Joe was. Even though he was castigating him, he said something about how swell he was personally or something. Anyway, one more from Mitt Romney on Donald Trump, on the other hand. Now, I will remind you, he couldn't find fault with Joe Biden, not at all. And I remind you that, like at Harvard, these people are so committed to defeating Republicans, they would rather ride with an anti-Semite president than allow a Republican congresswoman even an inch on maybe looking like she was victorious in a line of questioning. They're willing to ride with an anti-Semite. This is how committed leftists are. Mitt Romney.
Let's turn to those comments that we just played by former President Donald Trump. As you heard, he said he would not be a dictator except for day one. At an event in New York last night, he tried to downplay that. But what was your reaction to hearing those words, Senator? Do you believe him?
You know, when I was a kid, there was something called a gumball machine. You could put a penny in and a gumball would come out. It was automatic. There was no filter. Put in the penny, out came the gumball. Donald Trump is kind of a human gumball machine, which is a thought or a notion comes in and it comes out of his mouth. There's not a lot of filter that goes on. There's not a lot of what's the implication. No, he just says whatever. I don't attach an enormous amount of impact to the particular words that come out and try and evaluate each one of them. I do think you can look at his record as president, and particularly in the last months of his presidency, and say, this is a dangerous approach, it's an authoritarian approach. That gives me far more concern than him playing to the crowd as he did.
It's cold water on all of us and a reminder of what is still pervasive in the Republican Party, is it not? That is a refresher as to why Democrats win and Republicans lose, because people like Mitt Romney are still prominent in the Republican Party. People like Mitt Romney still have a voice in the Republican Party. This is what the House fight has been about, folks. Trying to purge and rid itself of Mitt Romney types. The party is full of people like this. He's just on his way out, so he doesn't care, and he goes on a national television show to say it aloud. To suggest that Donald Trump, things were worse under Donald Trump, that he is an authoritarian and a potential dictator. Things just fall out of his mouth. Has he not seen the speeches and the speech of our vice president and our current president? Has he not watched and seen what this government has done in collusion with social media companies? Has he not seen Joe Biden try to use the Labor Department to force us to take a shot? Has he not seen a wide open border? Has he not seen the disaster that is our economy now versus what it was? Over at CBS real quick. How about these polling numbers from a new CBS poll over there on Face the Nation?
The president has a lot of foreign policy, national security crises on his desk right now.
the Israel-Hamas war is one of them. What is perception of that?
So his handling of the war is negative, and it's gone a little lower, in part because people aren't sure that the steps his administration is taking are bringing the war, helping bring the war to a peaceful resolution, number one. And number two, we've talked a lot about some of the splits within his own party on this, which is always important for a president on foreign policy. There's an increasing number of Democrats who now say they think the president is giving too much support to Israel.
Increasing number of Democrats who think the president is giving too much support to Israel. Now, that's interesting because the Hill writes progressives face growing primary threats over Gaza stance. So which is it? Mainstream media is telling us that Joe Biden is facing more pressure from the Democrats because he's too supportive of Israel. The Hill says progressives are facing primary threats because they're too supportive of Hamas. Only one can be true. I guess we'll see in due course. But this is my point, and it's not just this one. It's also on the economy. Take a listen to this discussing the CBS poll.
Our new CBS News poll says the most important challenge facing the country is inflation, with 7 in 10 Americans disapproving of President Biden's handling of it. Next, immigration at the border. And that issue is keeping a foreign aid package with badly needed support for Ukraine and aid to Israel tied up in Congress. The state of democracy is the third biggest problem in the eyes of Americans, and rounding out the top 4, gun violence. Another problem for which there seems to be little solution or political appetite for legislation that might help fix it.
I don't even know what state of democracy is. They keep putting this in surveys. What does state of democracy even mean? Concerns over the state of our democracy. As I know you know, and has been said repeatedly, we are a representative republic. We're not even a democracy by definition. So this made-up term of the state of our democracy is in peril, and they make it a choice on the surveys. Comes in number 3 of American support. The economy, the border, and the state of democracy, followed by guns. Right. Okay. But my point is, and just one more here on this CBS poll, people's wallets ultimately are what drive most people's sentiments when they vote. It's always been true. It's the economy, stupid.
Look, the rate is slowing, but prices are still high. And so when you ask people, okay, the jobs market is strong. Yes, they acknowledge that, but their income isn't keeping up with inflation. And that's that immediate pocketbook impact where you see such big numbers say that.
Because prices are still not back at those pre-pandemic levels.
Right. And when you look at what can be done from there, people say, okay, well, number one, there's no appetite for more rate hikes. And that's important. That's affecting a lot of, especially a lot of young people as well. There's a large sense that they think the president can control inflation. And look, objectively, that may or may not be the case, but it kind of comes with the job, right? They're not certain. In fact, many aren't sure what exactly the White House has done about all of this. And so his handling of inflation in particular remains low.
Yeah, the pollster there throwing in, hey, listen, you can't beat up on the president for these interest rates. I mean, that's the Fed. He can't do anything about it. Poor Joe. Leave him alone. These people that responded this way, that they're concerned about the economy, they're just stupid. They don't get how the economy works. You dummies. My new CBS poll says that people are mostly concerned about the economy, but most of them are too stupid to know that the Fed runs everything, not poor Joe. Leave Joe alone, says the pollster, basically. And, of course, that completely ignores the rampant spending. But anyway, I digress. My point is, while all of these problems befall the Democrat Party, they stay locked in defense of one another. At all times, they stay locked in defense of one another. And what does Mitt Romney do? What does the Republican Mitt Romney on the Sunday shows do? He does nothing but talk about the authoritarianism of Trump and defends Biden. So not that you needed the reminder, but if you wonder how it is that this party is in such a mess, such an excrement show, I remind you, until the Republican Party is rid of Mitt Romney types, there will never be meaningful opposition to the Democrat madness, and they don't have to sweat it. It really is. The jingle is true. For the best night's sleep in the whole wide world, visit mypillow.com. I'm sleeping like a baby. I can't lie about it. I mean, I have this MyPillow body pillow I use every single night. Tuck it under the blankets, lay next to me. I know, not very romantic on Valentine's Day, but most of us that have been married and you're sleeping nightly, after a while, people sleep hot. I don't know about you. I get hot. I need space. But MyPillow, what's so great about MyPillow and their new MyPillow 2.0 technology is it's exactly for people that sleep hot. So I get this side sleeping thing where I just can't sleep on my back or my stomach. I like sleeping on the side. Maybe you do too. This body pillow they make, like it doesn't get hot, but it is so supportive. And it's like 3 feet long. So it's just perfect to lay your head on. You can tuck it in between your knees to take a little pressure off the lower back or the knees. I love it. Plus, I'm on these Giza Dream Sheets, which are crazy comfortable. We've got the towels, which are super absorbent. We dry off with every morning, thanks to MyPillow.com. My dog, Dean, is on the MyPillow bed for the dog. Loves it. And that's just some of the products. Right now, I'm sipping my coffee. Mike has his own line of coffee. I got the light brew. I think next time I'm going to order the dark brew and try that. But all of these products and so many more, from the robes to the slippers, Christine loves her MyPillow slippers. You got to check it out. And if you go to MyPillow.com and order today, you use my promo code ChrisPodcast. ChrisPodcast. That allows you to save up to 66% on everything on the website. And it also lets them know that you listen to the podcast, which means a lot to me. They're advertising with me in the hopes to reach you. I know you're going to love the products, but when you let them know Chris Podcast, it gets you the discount and lets them know you listen. So thanks for that. It's a three-legged stool. Hopefully everybody wins. So MyPillow.com, promo code Chris, or for the best customer service, you should know everything you order, 60-day money-back guarantee, a 10-year warranty. So they're really high-quality products and made here in the United States. So 800-932-5056 to order in person, 800-932-5056, or MyPillow.com, promo code Chris. Look at this story from Fox News today. This is one of my favorites of the day. Deep, deep trouble. Democrats reportedly bringing in Hillary Clinton to help with Biden's reelection.
Oh, boy.
Oh, man. I am sick and tired of your hot Joe. I'm here to help. Oh, I can't wait to hear that screeching harpy's voice out on the campaign trail for bumbling, stumbling Joe. Meanwhile, Joe Biden is coming to Philadelphia again today. I don't know why. I don't know what the speech is about. I have no information on it whatsoever. I'm sure several members of this audience do. That's been the kind of morning I've had. But nevertheless, everybody wants into the act. But for whatever reason, Joe is making yet another, probably getting some more stuff. Got to get his juice from the Wilmington residents. So he comes here under the auspices of giving some campaign speech, and then they run him down 95 to get the stuff, the amphetamine reload, to send him back to D.C. for his event tonight. He's having some Hanukkah event or some such thing at the White House where he's going to pretend that his party doesn't hate Jews. So got to get your amphetamine shots before your We Love Jewish People party.
They didn't learn about lighting candles from his birthday a few weeks ago?
Right. You'd think. Democrats reportedly bringing in Hillary Clinton as reinforcement to help Biden. NBC News reports the former Secretary of State held a fundraiser for Biden last month at her Georgetown home that raised close to $1 million. Her popularity with women and key parts of the Democrat base are considered assets for Biden as he attempts to expand his outreach to voters. Clinton's role in Biden's reelection effort is expected to grow as the 2024 presidential election near. Oh, that'll be something special to see. Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden out on the stage together. You remember how when Democrats were running for re-election and Joe Biden was running for election the first time and you couldn't find Barack Obama anywhere? That was supposedly the most historic, important, loving, sweetness and light president we've ever had in the history of presidents. And by the time he was done, no Democrat wanted him anywhere near. She's worse by a lot. She might be this is a toss-up, but I would say that she might be the most loathed political figure by most people in the country. Now, I know they keep saying she's popular with women. She's popular with women who have cats and ferns as their company full-time, but not many others, I can't imagine. Joe's going to go with the I'm with her shirt? Is that it? Charlie Hurt said, you know they're in deep, deep trouble if you're picking up the bat phone and calling Hillary Clinton. I think it was sort of interesting that their thinking is he needs help among women. If you need help among women voters and you're a Democrat and you're running against Trump, you should quit. It's over, says Charlie. I agree. Alicia Acuna said the Clintons are known for showing up and will come in and give everything they can to help. Yeah, speaking of popularity with women, you don't hear a lot from Bill anymore, do you? You didn't hear a lot from Bill when his wife was running. So whatever perceived help this woman is going to give Joe Biden, if Bill Clinton shows up and starts talking about women,
The Chris Stigall Show podcast.